Yeah, this is a perfect time to tell this story. So this is a story, this is my story about some history. And there are a lot of players in this story. Some of them are gone, so I won't use their names. I'll refer to them as uncle or a family member, elder, something of that term. Anyway, if you go back and look at some of the stories I've told about boarding school, when I got out of boarding school, that story is there, so you can look at that. But when I got out, I was pretty nuts. I was pretty nuts, and I didn't have a lot of direction, and no elders in my circle to give me a direction at all. So I kind of went outside of my circle, and I went out to the reservation to a clan uncle. And I started visiting with him, and he encouraged me to dance, and so I put together an outfit, and I was starting to really understand that I had been really lost, and so I had a dream, and in the dream my grandpa came, and he said, everything's going to be okay. And I said, oh. And when I woke up, I made the choice to, quit drinking alcohol and start cleaning up my life because it was a mess. And so I went to the reservation and I talked to my clan uncle, and he agreed to send me up on the mountain. And so I did. I prepared for the winter, through the winter months as he asked, and took sweats with him and listened to him, and started to try to change my point of view, but I was so colonized. It's just terrible because your education just takes you and puts you straight into a box and of the way you think, and it's you think about it analytically, either quantitative or qualitative, quantitative or, I always get those mixed up, it's about, the quality of your research, and how do you research and how do you look at things, and the colonization really, restricts how you think about nature. Fortunately for me, I had a father that took me outdoors, and so I spent a lot of time outdoors. So, in this time of my life, I was really wanting to be outdoors, and so I did. I spent a lot of time outdoors. I quit drinking. I went up on the mountain. It was a wonderful year, and when I came back, I told the elder, I told him what had happened, and he said, well, the next thing is, you should go into a Sundance. And it was overwhelming concept. I had seen one at Fort Washakie when I was a little boy, and my dad had been taken in one before the war, or before he went to the war in 41. But I never anticipated doing something of that nature. So as I went through time, that year, and I was working. I was working in an oil refinery, and it was pretty stressful, a lot of drama. And trying to, get up with the sun every day was really difficult. And so I was realizing again, my analytical mind is there's a sunrise every second, every split minute second there's a sunrise on this planet. And so, I quit beating myself when I would miss sunrise, because I had seen so many. I started to realize, I missed one, but don't beat me up. There was still one, and there's going to be another one for tomorrow. So, continue forward. And I went and did all I was expected to do through the year that my elder had asked. And I attended the prayer meetings, and I attended sweats, whatever. And sometimes the prayer meetings were just he and I and his wife. And it was just lovely moments of just the three of us. And there was another guy, sometimes he came, and so there'd be four of us maybe at a prayer meeting. But he talked about all of the Sundance things, every month we talked about it. And so I went in the Sundance, and it was powerful. And I thought to myself, this is where I should be in this kind of setting. But of course, the Sundance deals with a lot of activity in that Sundance that my elder had me participate in. There's a lot of activity, a lot of dancing, a lot of singing, a lot of praying, a lot of emotions, and no food and water. So, by the time you get out, you're pretty exhausted, really. And I thought that was outstanding. Anyway, as I went through this series of Sundances, and I went and visited with my elders, more and more about it, there was more and more was unfolded, and told to me about the Sundance. And at one point, I said, well, I'll sponsor a Sundance. And that came from a dream I had had in the summer. And I sponsored a Sundance. And it was a remarkable, it was actually, instead of a 1-year period, it was actually for 2 years. And when we got done afterwards, my elder says, well, he says, you've seen everything, and you could do this. And I said, I didn't know the language, and I don't know the people, and it's not really my place. But I would like to consider something remote. And we visited about it, and later that year, I had been invited. There was one of the things that always kind of disturbed me at the Sundance Fair, the non-local people coming, and just to observe and to draw off of the dance, and that has always sort of irritated me. Though they were nice enough people, and I'm sure everything was fine. And my elder always, regarded everybody who came as that the dance, had brought them to the dance. So, I kept it to myself, and yet I always saw, something way up in the hills. From fasting in the mountains, I saw something where a small group could represent a whole. And it wasn't until later, and the politics of the Sundance, it just became the drama of, who did this, and that person did that, and the drama became, and the politics became just overwhelming, and actually started stealing some of my joy. So as I did before, I went fasting as, the elders said you should do. I went fasting up in the mountains. Went up in the mountains. Actually, my elder had told me where to go, and so that's where I went. I went into the Wind Rivers, and it was outstanding, but you know, it was brutal, physically brutal up in there. It was on Easter weekend. It was just physically brutal. Um, the wind and snow and all of that. But in the same sense, from that, you know, I received this incredible gift, and I went back to my home, and I told my brother at the time. I told him, I said, "This is what happened," and I thought, "Wow, this is incredible," because earlier that year, in the fall of that year, because this was Easter in the fall, I had been invited to go to Indiana. And in Indiana, there was a group of people that my elder had been involved with for years and years and years. And, you know, every now and again, select people would go to Indiana, and we would kind of be, you know, viewed, you know, would be observed for, you know, how we lived. And so it was my turn after the Sundance that I sponsored. And so I went, and it came up more than once that the idea of a second Sundance, something quiet, something off by itself, rather than the communal Sundance. In fact, there was great discussion with my elders then, and a guy who wrote a book named Michael Fitzgerald. Great discussions on a road trip to Indianapolis about just that topic, about me taking my elder, who would run the dance, up to the mountains. And we would have a small group, no more than 13, in fact. So, as it turned out, politics, and when we got back, you know, the politics drove a nail into every direction when we got back because of this discussion, I believe. Anyway, that's what drove me to go to the mountains at Easter, was you know, that discussion. So I went, and sure enough, you know, there was a gift given, and so I came back. I was pretty frightened, actually, because I know there's a big responsibility. But again, you know, I was taught everything about the Sundance that one man could interpret, and I was still learning more about how the Sundance comes to be, and so I just went ahead and you know, started doing those dances, and I did them for over 35 years, I think, at least 30 years. And basically, it was a room of rainbows. It was a concept that I was taught by the elder, that if somebody came, I'd be responsible for getting them through to safe, and when we got them back after the dance, fed them, and released them to the world, that my responsibility was over. So that's how I did that. And I found that to be very, very stressful. And a lot of the people who came were, I would say, white privileged, and really didn't care about the opportunity that they were being given. They were more interested in the challenge versus the opportunity. And so as time went on, you know, that became so stressful and dramatized that it just became basically unhinged. But then, as life goes on, there's a lot of other things in your life that happen where I wasn't really available to do sun dancing until, recently. Now I'm an old man, looking back at my stories, and I think, there was lots and lots of gossip about whatever I did, and I always did what I felt was the right thing, and so that's always going to get challenged. And even in this tape, in this discussion, the challenge is that you try to tell your story and just put it out there, and if people don't believe it, they don't believe it. That's their freedom, and that's what freedom is about. And then the story should stop. But I found that for sundancing, when I was sundancing with the community, it was just a lot of gossip, and it just made me sad. And so when I was given this dance up in the mountains, I was really happy about that. But in learning why people want to do things, I found, unfortunately, quite a few people come, they just want to lie about, their past or where they are in their life. And actually, this is the moment you really needed to be honest, just let it out. And I can't say that I've been changed from the person I was years and years ago. Some of it, I've gotten old, and I've seen how some of my behavior has hurt people. So I try to understand things, and I try to move forward. And as the sun comes each morning, I try to touch it and get some of that on me. Because we know that all of our ancestors are facing us, and this is a great moment to rejoice in the sun dancing.